So the audience are startups, entrepreneurs and wannabe entrepreneurs. Start பண்ணி கொஞ்ச நாள் ஆனவங்களும் ஆரம்பிக்கணும், பிஸ்னஸ் ஸ்டார்ட் பண்ணணும்னு நினைக்கிறோம். ஸோ வி ஹாவ் 1 hour, நான் சொன்ன மாதிரி வி ஹாவ் 1 hour டைமுங்க. ஸோ ஃபர்ஸ்ட் ஆஃப் வில் டாக் அபவுட் யுவர் entrepreneurial journey, then we'll probably have question and answer. I think so. It is good to go to start, and we can start now.
Good afternoon, எல்லாத்துக்கும். Good afternoon to everybody, and welcome. Thank you for coming for this particular interaction. I must thank the organizers for having called me today to talk on what we call my entrepreneurial journey. So basically, I think idoda artham enna, I can speak in both English and Tamil together, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the whole objective of this particular interaction, I suppose, is to give you some experiences from my journey for the last 2 decades as an entrepreneur, and hopefully all of you can take some messages and become successful entrepreneurs yourselves. So if that will be of any use to you all, then of course the objective is well served. So keeping that in mind, I think also in this current situation of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think it's become all the more imperative for entrepreneurs to come forward, or wannabe entrepreneurs to take that step forward. It may not be the best of times to take that initial step, but at the same time, I think this pandemic in the last 2-3 months has taught us the independence that you will have, the success you will have as an entrepreneur, rather than being only a salaried individual with some other organization. So where you have the entrepreneurship spirit and where you have that opportunity coming in front of you, you must grab it, is the first message I would like to give. Now, to go into my personal journey as an entrepreneur, basically to give you a background, I am from an agricultural family here in Pollachi, which is in the Coimbatore district of Tamil Nadu. And I had a passion for both agriculture and medicine. So when I did finish my post-graduation in medicine, my undergraduation I finished in 86, 87, and I remember I like to tell the story more than once. My grandfather asking me, he wanted to make sure that I stay back in my hometown of Pollachi and Vetikarapudur. So he sensed that I was having this idea of going to the US, like most of us doctors at that time. Now I think the corona has made us realize why it is better to stay home than anywhere else. But anyway, at that time, he was somebody now who would not sort of tell me, do this, do that. He would want you to deduce on your own, to come to your own assessment. So he did ask me what was the most important thing I wanted to do in my life, the most passionate thing. I said, I can't choose one, I have 2, which is medicine and agriculture. So he said, no, you must. I said, no way, why should I choose one? And of course his answer was, if you want to do both, there's no better in our taluk or our village. So that's how I realized the need to stay back. Post my post-graduation, of course in 1990, I had the situation where suddenly I did lose him. He passed away, so I was a 27-year-old entrepreneur in 1990. Wondering what to do. It was not easy. Financially, it was not like as if I had a silver spoon or something like that. So there were tough times. And while I did have medicine as a backbone to giving some income, this is another message I want you all to take. Today, you may be in a particular job. You may be a salaried individual. But at the same time, you've got to look at whether you could lay the foundation for your entrepreneurship journey if you have an opportunity coming up. So what I did was, along with my medical profession that I got into in late 1990, I looked at agriculture. From the agriculture point of view, I don't mean just doing the traditional way that you have inherited or learned from somebody else in the previous generation. I looked at it and I realized, while it's all very green to look at from the outside, the bottom line in your balance sheet is not necessarily green. So it was mostly red or bordering on the red and green. So I think that's when I remember a slogan in my little room in my home, and I said, a lakh an acre. Meaning, how do I do an agricultural business where I could make a net profit of lakh an acre per year? And so from that, I went into looking at, we had a coconut-based cropping system, was very common in Pollachi Taluk. But I knew that alone will not be enough to grow in agriculture, because if you want to grow in agriculture, you've got to be more innovative. You've got to raise the income per unit area of land. Otherwise, what ends up in being is that it's best a very weak pension plan. If you're just not going to innovate, you'll end up having a very weak pension plan, which is always under threat. So I didn't want it to be a pension plan, but I wanted it to be a growth plan. So then I looked at intercropping systems, and just going fast so that I don't take too much time of yours. I like to have a lot of time to interact after I give you my summary. So I looked at various crops, and while we had the traditional crops of intercropping, be it banana or turmeric or so, and of course cocoa being a new crop, but I think I wanted to do something that is new. So the next message, something that is not the traditional thing that you're copying what somebody else has done. Always look at something that you can take as a niche product, something that somebody else has not done. So that way you get a head start above everybody else. I'm not saying you should not do something that has been proven to be successful, but where parallelly you can look at something else, always take that. So then that's where I looked at newer cropping systems, and where vanilla was the crop that I read about. Nobody else had done it in India as a commercial crop prior to 1994. So being a physician, a doctor did help, because I was able to read most of the literature in agriculture about any crop. So I did a lot of self-learning. And then somewhere in 97, 98, I did have the first incomes from it. I learned on value addition. Again, next message, always look at your supply chain, where from a producer of the raw material, if you can add value, then you're always going to be an advantage. So that was the next thing, to add value to the raw material, to process vanilla, to learn about that particular difficult art, as we call it. And that was between 98 and 2002. And 2002, of course, then came the next step, where I had the many foreign companies coming in to look at joint ventures. Again, one more lesson to learn when you have that opportunity. Do not be over enamored by anybody who comes from abroad. We are as good, if not much better, in multitasking and our knowledge. Perhaps the only advantage that many of them in the West have is that the language, sometimes they may be speaking a language of English that is not so easily understood. So English is nothing to do with intelligence. Speaking a language has nothing to do with intelligence. It's just a skill. So it's like learning to ride a bicycle or something. So with that, I did go into a joint venture starting in 2003, wherein with a particular French company, we did do a joint venture to sell vanilla in the West. So earlier, of course, so that was my first, I think I can call it, official entrepreneurship in 2003 and then 4. So that was when I started. We started, I think my first year, I remember our turnover was hardly not even more than 55 or 70 lakhs or something, I think, in 2004, very small. And of course, that time I was more a producer of the vanilla, and the marketing abroad was done by my JV partner. But in that, I learned again the next step, other than cultivation. Then you look at the next step, which is value addition. And then I learned the journey of marketing across the world between 2004 to 2010. So that was my next step. And when I had grown enough, and I realized that you don't need another foreign company to really do this for you. You can do it on your own. Then, of course, we came out of the joint venture and we grew into our own company, which, as I said, from something like 50 lakhs or so, we are on the verge of just crossing the 500 crore mark now. So that's been the 15-year journey in vanilla. But never forget the people who supply you this. As a farmer, I know how I have experienced the pain of marketing your product. wherein you do all the hard work and you go to a store, or even by store, you probably go to a street corner in Chennai and you see the tender coconut that you sold for 20 rupees going there for 40 rupees, and you wonder why are you getting half that. So that way I've never forgotten my roots. So another thing what we did was what I call backwards integration. So we decided that as a company we must support the farmers who give us raw material, because from an individual grower I went on to create a network of farmers, and that particular organization we call it Indian Vanilla Initiative. So IVI, or Indian Vanilla Initiative, has currently around 1,500 plus farmers contracted. We have 12-year contracts with them. Most of them are in Karnataka, where the climate for vanilla is even more conducive. And the 5 things that we've done there to ensure is, number 1, to give them technology, to have follow-up with field officers around the year, every month, to ensure that we buy back the product at the farm gate, to give them a minimum support price no matter what the international price is. And when the prices do go up, ensure that you share that increase in prices, that increase in margin, ensure that you share it with your supplier. So these are the 5 pillars on which we did sign this up. And this particular certificate, this particular method where you have the grower, you have us as the processor and the marketing, and having this audited and certified. Many of you may have heard of certificates like organic certificate, which is purely a method of growing. But there is something called sustainability certification, where you certify the whole supply chain. That's a huge advantage. Today in this corona pandemic situation, when many people are, say, having decrease in their business, in the last 60 days, we've had a growth in our business to about, I think, around 23-24% growth in the last 2 months alone. And I was wondering how come? Because for sure, people during a pandemic or these times are not going to be eating more vanilla ice cream for sure. So how come why is it growing for us? Then I realized that the end consumer is now valuing the fact that we have the supply chain, the sustainable supply chain more, and they're coming back and saying, we want to give you more of the market share. Not that the market consumption has increased. It's only they want to give you more of the share, because they begin to realize what value as a supplier or producer that we are. So therefore, making sure that you nurture, fertilize, grow the people who are supplying you and the people that you're supplying your product to is very, very important. I think another lesson that I could say. So this particular thing nowadays, you have a certification for supply chain, what we call today, one of the certifications called Rainforest Alliance certification. So Expovan, our group of companies, is the first company in the world to have Rainforest Alliance certification for vanilla as a grower, plus processor, plus value addition, plus marketing. So that's another certification we added, which gives us a sort of passport. Companies like Unilever, for example, have said that from 2023, they will buy their major products only from companies that have a sustainability certificate. So in anticipation of 2023, we are already that in 2020. So always think ahead is my next particular advice that I would give you. Next is, of course, I think another major reason is always today people are saying things like local, vocal, and all those things you see on the TV. So I think to give you an example of local, every employee that we have here, everybody is from the district. In fact, I would say 99% are from the taluk itself, Pollachi Taluk. We made sure that you nurture the workforce from your region, so that come a situation, you don't have suddenly your workforce having to go back somewhere, attrition of workforce because they think it's better to live somewhere else. That sort of situation does not come. You don't lose your workforce, especially your skilled workforce. When I say skilled, is a particular skill, whichever field you are in. So that is another thing we always cultivated. In fact, I think majority of my managers or supervisors, of course, none of them had ever seen vanilla in their life. when I hadn't seen it prior to 94 anyway. So, but what I'm saying is, we took people not for their educational qualification, but for their attitude. So if you're growing a team, take people based on attitude. Talent is important, but attitude is more important. So whether the person is willing to give their all for what they do, are they coming there because they want the job as a passing through phase because they have no other job, or do you sense that they are passionate about the job that they're going to get, that they will stick with you in the long run? So that is important. It reminds me of a saying, I also have this passion for horses. So one of the Olympic horse trainers, George Morris from the US, said, he was talking about talent and attitude. He said, talent, give me a dime, I'll give you a dozen. A dime is a dollar. Give me a dollar, I'll give you a dozen. Meaning you can always buy talent. But he said, attitude, I'll take that over talent any day. So meaning you cannot buy, the right attitude is something that comes from within the person. It's not about something that you can buy with money. So always choose your partner or your employees or your managers based on their attitude. I never look at their educational qualification. Only later it comes as you did study, is it okay, which degree? And that sort of thing. So that's another small snippet from my journey. So I think, as I said, I don't want to take too much time of yours. So that's about how we've grown and some of the important experiences. Next is quality. Never compromise on that. You can never be better than somebody else by going cheaper, but you can always be better than somebody else by being better in quality. If you are of the right quality, whatever product you produce, if you have the right quality, then people will always come to you and then they will discuss the prices later. But if you think, I'm going to give this at 10 rupees less or $10 less, and therefore I'm going to compromise in the manufacture by quality, don't ever do that. Don't ever. If you think that to give the best quality, this is your cost price, then you have to always talk from the standpoint of quality onwards. And then what else should I say? Transparency. Being transparent with your buyer in whichever business you start is going to help you. There will be those certain people who will try to squeeze and make more out of you. But you should look at the long run. Out of 10 people you interact with, there will always be at least 7 or 8 who will value the fact that you're transparent in what you do. So that's another experience, I think. I think other than that, I think I'll leave it to question and answers rather than just be a monologue from this side. So I think I've just run through in the last 20 minutes what I've done and what I hope to continue to do. I'm open to taking questions from all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. I have this question for all. This is a common question for all the speakers. Like, what was in your entrepreneurial journey? What was the top 3 problems or challenges you faced, and how did you overcome that?
Yeah, the top 3 challenges that we faced is when you start off is always about the financial part, because you need a capital, right? You need capital for what you do. You're not just your working capital, but also your capital for investment in, especially if you're doing a manufacturing. So that is one particular very difficult part, to raise capital, because it can always not be from your own money or whatever. That's very rarely the case. So that was there. But I think the environment compared in say 2002 and 3 and 2020 has changed a lot in terms of that. Financial institutions are much more open to seeing your project. So that was one big challenge. The second challenge, I think, was when you want all the points that I said, whether it's about training a workforce from local, whether you want to be the highest in quality, all these are very, very challenging goals. They're not easy goals to keep. They can be easily said, but to stick on to that and say, come what may, I will not compromise on going to. So I think I think it's this way. I can give you another experience from being a doctor. In 1990s, almost every doctor used to have, at those times there was not disposable syringe. There used to be this small little thing where you boil the water and there'll be syringes inside, right? And your needles. So anybody with a fever always will say, Doctor, usi podona. So, but I never had that. And I used to keep disposable, and that too, I think if I saw, even now, I think if I see on a busy day, let's say on those, I've reduced my medical practice to half what I used to do for various other reasons. But I'm saying, when I was seeing 100 patients, I probably give an injection to one person or two people. That too only if necessary. So most in the beginning, the challenge when the doctor, that used to be the critic you will get. But no, I said no. I know when you need it. I'm not going to give you that injection to satisfy you. I will stick to my principle. If you don't get better, come and question me. If I've made you better, no questions asked. Simple. So that way, I think it'll be difficult in the beginning. So you may lose a lot of clients. You may lose a lot of as patients, as I say. So that was the other challenge. So I think these are three things that I can straight away say. But all these are worth investments. If you stick to these principles, 100% you'll get your returns later.
Okay. So anybody, if you have any questions, you could just put it in the chat box, or you could raise your hand. So probably you could ask him directly. So we have a question from a person called Michael. The question goes like, how did you venture into something new even in 1986? Did you not have a fear of start and fear of failure?
Of course, I 100% had the fear of start. And then once again, I have to give you an example from my grandfather once again. And so he said, but he was not there to see any of this start from he was not there to see even the start of it. So that was when I was a school student. So he said, you see, if you're trying for something, he said, look at it as fruits. What fruit you have in hand, make sure you don't lose that. And whatever you're trying for is an additional fruit that you're trying to pluck. So ensure this fruit is safe, and then you pluck it. Even if you don't get that, you still have the fruit. So I think that way, when I start, okay, if I've got a coconut farm, I will ensure that I increase the productivity of that coconut farm to the maximum, and then I will take an investment apart from that profit or a part of the borrowing also, and invest in something else. So that way, you're not going to be left out in the open suddenly. So that was an experience or a way of which I always looked at growing every year. So yes, definitely it is a risk. Definitely you feel anxious, no doubt. As long as you feel you're not going to step down from where you are, even though you may not step up from where you are, I think that journey can be taken.
Okay. A person has raised her hand, Anuradha. Anuka, you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah. Hello, doctor. Good afternoon.
Oh, good afternoon.
Been following all your live Zoom, all the calls, all the conversations, doctor. Doing a fantastic job. And it's far-sightedness as of looking at 2023. Given the circumstances, how far-sighted can you be? Because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, and in any kind of business. Right now, everything seems to have come to an absolute halt. And how do we take that forward?
See, definitely you're very, very right in that. And I'm tempted to quote, out of so many economic quotes and advices that one would have read in the last 3 months post the outbreak of COVID, I'm tempted to quote Jack Ma, who said, 2020 is about staying alive. Right? And he said, all your dreams and visions and everything can stay for 2021. So in a way, you're all in a sort of, most of us in a state of freeze, where big growth plans and things have to come after this particular situation, which come to be the unfortunate ones in it right now. So adanala, for sure, you have to compartmentalize your plans. You have to look at what you can just keep rolling or what you say, may not look at growth as necessary unless you happen to be in a field. If you look at that spectrum of businesses, and there was a very nice chart like an S, and it said, say if you're in a medical field, if you're in food, if you're in agriculture, these are fields that are not going to be affected by this. In fact, could even grow more. But if the same thing at the end of the spectrum, you happen to be in tourism or hotels or in airline industry or travel, then it's going to be a red zone, from the green to the red. So which field are you in? You have to do a self-assessment right now and then look at maintenance alone for the bare minimum for the next quarter. But for sure, you can be assured that this is not going to last. This particular negative or bad situation is not going to last forever. I would give it about 6 months' time. As a physician, as a doctor, I would say that it's going to take you 6 months to get out of this. So 6 months is about just keeping the engine running. You have to look at that. And then you will have your growth post that, is what I would say.
Okay. We have a question from Srinati. Srinati, you can go ahead with your question. Srinati?
I think if I'm right, she's muted.
Yeah, she's muted. Srinati, you can unmute yourself and go ahead with your question. Okay. She has just messaged her question here. Is being multi-phase a good or bad image to have? You are a doctor, agriculturist, entrepreneur. It's personally inspiring for me, but there are people who say it's better to know known for a single thing. How do you see this as your perspective, please?
No, I think I don't agree with that. I think the people who do say that will tell you it's better to be a master of one than a jack of all trades, is that famous saying. So, but I don't necessarily agree. What I'm saying is, you have to be a master of anything you choose, right? If I am able to be a master of 2 fields that I happen to be, or 3 fields that I happen to be, why not, right? For most of the people, mastering one would itself be a big challenge. So, number one, if you're going to choose whatever field you're choosing, ensure that you're doing it because you have the passion for it. Again, I remember sometime about 15 years ago, I think, somebody was talking about poultry industry to me, and they said there are huge, there's a huge opportunity in that. You can make a lot of income, blah, 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 blah. So, I did look at it, and then I remember visiting one of the large hatcheries in Hosur region, Venkateshwara hatchery, and said, how much ever money I make in this, I'm never going to enjoy this. I did not see it as a very difficult field then. I looked at it and I said, yeah, this is quite easily done. It's just a matter of capital. But I said, I'll never enjoy this. So I'm never going to come here. I will never do this. So one is to make sure that will you enjoy doing that. Second, after you've taken that, there is no field where you can be perfect. But there's always in every field where you can get better. So you have to constantly endeavor to get better in whatever you're doing. So if that is the aim, then you will definitely excel. So choose the number of fields. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3, depending on your availability of time, mental energy, and all of that. And make sure that whichever field you're doing, you don't just it's not some, make sure you constantly strive to know everything about that field. That's my advice.
We have one more question from the participant, how is Indian vanilla different from Madagascar vanilla, and is any way organic vanilla has edge over normal vanilla?
Oh, yeah. See, okay. One is vanilla per se. Madagascar is the country that started the first in mass production of vanilla way back in 1845, which is about 75 years ago. So they had a head start in marketing. Nobody in India, in fact, when I was reading about vanilla and I said, why not India? I happened to read one small paragraph in some book that said the British East India Company brought a few plants to Kutralam in Tamil Nadu way back in 1845. So that was the key that made me lose my sleep, get up and start searching. How come? Why didn't it come? So then from there, of course, I went searching and we found just a few plants in a place called Mailadubara in Kerala near Idiki. But anyway, after growing it, to prove that Indian vanilla, while genetically or biologically is the same variety as Madagascar, which is called Vanilla planifolia, we ensured that we grew it and processed it. And in 2004, the French government gave a certification, which even till today holds, saying the highest vanillin content, like how you have curcumin in turmeric, the highest vanillin content for vanillas of the world is from South Indian vanilla. So we have shown it to be higher. So that certificate still holds. It's called French government notification number 63/2004. So I still show off with that when I meet my buyers, that we are the best. And then organic, yes, organic. For example, today, just before I came for this, I was with one of my Australian buyers and he placed an order for organic Indian vanilla, a few tons, which is a few pros in fact. So which once you are established, these sort of things happen in over a 10-minute call. 10 minutes of phone call is enough because you work for 10 years, 15 years for that. So there is always, but then all of your vanilla will not be organic, right? Because there's a premium for it, like you get a $20 premium for organic vanilla, current market. So everybody will not buy organic. So you should not have all your products as organic. You must have a mix of everything else, like how we have.
That is a question from a person called Carol. How did you find market for your product? What is the advice you would like to give to a budding company in finding the market for their products?
See, one big advantage is, I mean, I remember when I look at the 1990s and early 2000s, the connectivity. Today, the last 60 days or 90 days has shown, including this meeting today, how we can connect without being physically connected. You are connected over internet and over Zoom or whatnot. So it's a huge advantage. We all as entrepreneurs did not have that in the early 90s or mid 90s or even up to the late 90s. It just started to come in. I remember we used to press one button on MS-DOS and you'll hear the ringtone going round and round in your ears and suddenly you'll get a connection. So that's changed so much for the entrepreneurs of this decade. So what I'm saying is you have the internet through which you can contact anybody across the globe, but you must have a product, a way of manufacture, or even if you're trading, a way of trade that is different from the others in terms of quality, and you're accountable, and the person buying, you have to develop trust. So I think the current connectivity across the globe, which has been brought to light in this COVID situation, you should take advantage of.
There is a question from a person called Sendil. What are the principles you inherit yourself helping achieve success, and what you implement them for budding entrepreneurs?
I'm not sure I understood that question too well, but nevertheless, if he's asking about what I would advise the entrepreneurs, I think in my opening statement, whatever I said about understanding your field very well, trying to do a product that is different from the others if possible, ensuring quality is always your show off, on your portfolio, that quality is the best. Ensuring you develop the supply chain. Fourth is making sure whether the partners you have who are going to work with you or your managerial or your unskilled staff are all from the region that you can always fall back on so that you don't have worker attrition in your organization are some of the points that I would want you to keep in mind.
There is a question from a person called Kamalesh. Sir, how did you make farmers to take a newer crop that they were not familiar with it? Please give some tips to follow while making a cluster with farmers.
Okay, I think that was quite easy for me because I myself was a farmer, right? So I had to just remember my mindset when I started. So sharing that with the fellow farmer And of course, when we go to a farmer, we tell them, don't just shift from one to the other. You are a coconut farmer, tomorrow you want to be a vanilla farmer, day after tomorrow you want to be a mango farmer. No. Always keep, you must not put all your eggs in one basket. So always have different sources of income. So we tell a farmer, if he has 5 acres, choose half an acre maybe, choose one. Get good at it before you can grow better. Don't just look at the amount of money that you think will come. So that was one thing where you always have, spread your risks is one thing. Second is, of course, to teach. You have to always teach. They always teach. I love teaching. I think right from my medical college days, or even when I was a house surgeon, I'd be teaching my junior, the students and things. So sometimes that passion helped me a lot. So I love to teach, and therefore you have to teach, whether it's your farmer or your employee. If you teach, you can delegate work. And today you can sit, and from a time where I used to go to a farm twice a day, 15 years ago, today I'm going once a month to see the same farm, because I've been able to teach so many of my people there to take care of it and report back. If you don't teach, then you shouldn't delegate. If you have not taught the basics, how can you delegate and expect results? So first teach, then delegate, then monitor. No, that's the stepwise.
There is one more question, like still import of vanilla is taking place in India. Is it due to demand or price advantage?
No, see, import of vanilla takes place in India not for the use of vanilla in India. Some people import because for two things. One is as a value addition. That is, for example, you can buy scrap iron from somewhere, some other country, and bring it here and make it into a very good value-added steel product. Same way, there's so much demand for vanilla for us that sometimes, other than what we grow here, we import raw material and we process. So processing of vanilla is, I give the example between grape juice and wine. Both are from grapes. Anybody can pluck the grape, put it in a mixie, and in 2 minutes you'll have grape juice. But the same grapes, to make it into the best quality wine, you need months of processing, fermenting, and things. Same way, a vanilla takes 165 days, 5.5 months to process. So that value addition is a very handcrafted art. For that, you buy raw material from everywhere across the globe so that you can grow more, you have bigger volumes to do. While you always develop the supply chain from your own backyard, which is your own country. So that, I think, is what you see as raw material import. But as far as local consumption goes, I think about most of the consumption of local vanilla in India, we supply industry here.
Okay. So I have this question, like what gave you interest into vanilla? Specifically into that?
Yeah, the logical steps to come to vanilla was this. Number one, I first wanted to make sure I'm a farmer, I know my climate, I know my rainfall. Most importantly, to other farmers, when I meet many of my farmers, very sorry to say, even today, they talk in terms of acres that they have. I say it's not about how many acres you have, but how much water you have. Right? So what you're going to grow depends on how much water you have. When I meet a farmer of 2 generations, 3 generations, 99 out of 100 times, they are not able to answer this question, even though their sole profession is farming. I ask them, what's your water output from your farm per day in summer, which is like, say, April. So meaning, they'll say, no, we have 2 wells, 3 wells. No. What is the amount of liters per day collectively from this farm? Then we decide the crop. So one, I calculated that. Based on that climate and water, then I made a checklist of what all crops I can grow. In that I say, which is the one that gives the highest value addition and also the highest return per acre. I'll give you an example. I looked at cocoa, I looked at nutmeg, I looked at vanilla as the 3 that I would look at sometime in the late 90s. And I said, okay, vanilla is unique. It will give me the highest return, but it's the most difficult. Cocoa is the easiest, but it will give me the lowest. Nutmeg is something in between. So what I did was, cocoa, forget it. because there are enough people doing it. So I don't want to do that, because why? When I can make more money from a nutmeg or a vanilla, why should I go for cook? So these sort of things you have. Then I said, but I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket called vanilla. As a grower, value addition is different, growing is that, because it was a new crop. So I planted both. Right? So these sort of logical steps you have to use, and that brought me to this new crop. Right? So beyond being just a grower, I wanted to grow beyond being a farmer. I wanted to become an entrepreneur, a businessman. That's where I said, now I have to expand my supply chain from just beyond my own farm. And that's where I started to teach what I know to other farmers and say, you give me your raw material. I will make it more worthwhile for you to grow, to supply me raw material than trying to do some half-cooked processing. Right? I'm an expert in that. So this was my logical steps.
Okay. So, might be being into a agriculture family, but you have taken, you are a doctor. When you told your parents that you're coming back to farming and you wanted to become an entrepreneur, how was the response from the family and the society?
See, as I said, my mentor, my grandfather wasn't there when I came back because he was waiting for me to come. I came, and I still regret that I can't show him what I've done, because he passed away in 2 weeks after I came back. So that's something that I still always, worry that I couldn't show. But as far as my parents' side, I think my father has been somebody who said, if you've analyzed it, go ahead and do whatever. My mother was a little different. You want to take a risk. திருப்பி பூமியில போய் மண்ணில் போய் பணத்தை போடுறையா, all those things. So because I think they've all been hurt. So, but I think if you believe in something, you have to stick to it. Persevere with what you believe in. So,
yeah. Because I asked this question because என்னோட தாத்தா ஃபேமிலி ஜென்ரேஷன்ல we were also farmers. பட் அடுத்த ஜென்ரேஷன் நான் ஃபார்மிங் பண்ண வரேன்னு சொல்லும் போது there are a lot of challenges for me. இன்னைக்கு இந்த செஷனை I'm sitting in my farm and doing it. So that is.
No, it's understandable. When they've been hurt, they burnt their fingers. It's only natural for them for you to tell you, நீயும் போய் கையை சுட்டுக்காத அப்படிங்கிற சொல்றது இயற்கையானதுதான். பட் நம்ம அதை நல்லா ஆராய்ச்சி பண்ணி நமக்கு உறுதியா இருந்தா அந்த பர்டிகுலர் ஸ்டெப்பை நம்ம எடுத்தான் ஆகணும்.
So we have a question from a person called Dinesh. Dinesh, you can go ahead with your question, Dinesh.
Hello, doctor. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Actually.
How do we keep ourselves updated with industry-related information, insights, and forecasts?
Yeah. Okay. I think that's not so difficult, Dinesh, because you see, I still remember, as I was saying, if I wanted to read a journal on something to do with irrigation or fertilizer or medicine, it used to be so difficult in the late 90s to get your hand on anything. Today, you can, whichever field you're in, agriculture, medicine, whichever field you're in, today is like you have so much, it's only a matter of whether you have the time to read it, right? Because you have so much information. The last 90 days, I think, has been one of the pluses of this COVID lockdown for me personally, has been I've caught up on reading thoroughly about medicine. I've caught up on reading so much that I had to catch up on in terms of nutrition of plants and things. So I think today one cannot complain that you don't have information. It's a matter of making time to keep reading all that is out there, because 24 hours won't be enough. So I think information is there in plenty. It's just that you have to give your attention to it, is what I think.
It was very valuable. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Sir, are you able to hear me, sir? I'm Senthil.
Yes,
sir. நல்லா இருக்கீங்களா சார்? உங்களை நிறைய கேள்விப்பட்டிருக்கிறேன். In fact, one of my friends is also belongs to your party. அப்புறமா சார், I'm from திருச்செங்கோடுங்க. Basically from a village near திருச்செங்கோடு, வட்டூர்னு சொல்லிட்டு. But I live in கோயம்புத்தூர். அப்பா அம்மா அங்க they are into farming. இப்போ பாத்தீங்கன்னா நீங்க சொன்ன மாதிரியே we have around 1200 mango trees, அந்த அல்பான்சோ அண்ட் இமா பசந்த்னு வச்சிருக்கோம். பட் நீங்க சொன்ன இது வெண்ணிலா I am really interested. I don't know much about vanilla, but அந்த வெதருக்கு வருங்களா சார் from in திருச்செங்கோடு?
Okay, for example, திருச்செங்கோட்ல ஒன்று ஸ்ட்ரைட்டாகவே சொல்கிறேன் வரும். எங்கெங்க வரும்னு சொல்லிடுறேன், நாட் ஜஸ்ட் திருச்செங்கோட், ஃபார் த பெனிஃபிட் ஆஃப் அதர்ஸ். Vanilla will come anywhere in India subject to two things. Number one, the temperature in the shade. அதாவது நிழல்ல இருக்கக்கூடிய டெம்பரேச்சர் சம்மர்ல 35 டிகிரி சென்டிகிரேட தாண்டக்கூடாது as a higher limit, and lower limit it should not go below 10 degree centigrade. So இந்த ரெண்டு 10 degree and 35 degree centigrade வச்சுக்கிட்டீங்கன்னா anywhere where the altitude is 5,000 feet or below it will come temperature. ஏன் 5000 அடின்னு ஒரு உதாரணம் கொடுக்கணுங்க. நீங்க ஊட்டி போயிட்டீங்கன்னா, குன்னூர் போயிட்டீங்கன்னா 5500 அடி. ஸோ அங்க வந்து வின்டர் டெம்பரேச்சர் will be below 10 degrees. ஸோ அங்க பண்ண முடியாது. கொடைக்கானல்ல மேல பெருமாள் மலைக்கு மேல போயிட்டீங்கன்னா அகெயின் டெம்பரேச்சர் will be below 10 degrees in winter. பண்ண முடியாது. Everywhere else in Tamil Nadu 35 to 10 டிகிரிக்கு தாண்டாது. நீங்க சொல்லலாம் 35, 39, 40 சில டைம் வருங்களே ஏப்ரல் மாசத்துல. நான் சொல்றது ஷேட்ல, நிழல்ல. ஸோ வெளியில 40 டிகிரி இருந்தாலும் மரத்துக்கடியில உங்களுக்கு வந்து 40 இருக்காது, 35, 36 தான். ஸோ திருச்செங்கோடு will fall under that. Point number 1. Point number 2, இப்போ நான் அப்ளை சொன்னது போல, you should not shift from what is your staple income. ஸோ உங்களுக்கு mango farm is your staple, I wouldn't say you must shift. You should do a small amount of another crop. It could be vanilla, it could be any other crop. But let's imagine you want to do vanilla. How are we doing it? In a shade house. Vanilla requires, the next condition is it requires a shade of 50% shade from sunlight. So other whether நீங்க வந்து ஒரு கல்லார்லயோ பொள்ளாச்சியிலயோ அல்லது மேட்டுப்பாளையத்துல எங்க வச்சாலும் ஓப்பன் சன்லைட்ல வைக்க மாட்டீங்க. So you need to have a filtered sunlight. So natural filtered sunlight ஒரு பாக்கு தோப்புல வரலாம். பாக்கு தோப்பு இல்லாம ஒரு வெட்ட வெளியில என்ன பண்ணணும், ஷேட் ஹவுஸ், 50% ஷேட் நெட், கிரீன் ஆர் பிளாக் ஷேட். That's the third. அடுத்தது வாட்டர் ரிக்வயர்மெண்ட். Fortunately, it doesn't require plenty of water like any other orchid. It requires less water. So நீங்க வீட்டுல ஒரு சின்ன ஆர்கிட் செடி வச்சிருந்தீங்கன்னா, நீங்க ஒரு ரோஜா தண்ணி ஊத்துவீங்க, நீங்க ஸ்ப்ரே தான் பண்ணுவீங்க. You don't pour water இல்லையா? So அதனால தண்ணி ரொம்ப கம்மி. To give an example, ஒரு coconut farmக்கு you need 10,000 liters per acre per day in summer. Whereas in a vanilla farm you need 2,000. So 1/5 of the water. So இந்த மூணு கண்டிஷனும் இருக்குதுன்னா, lastly அந்த particular water should not be உப்பு தண்ணியா இருக்கக்கூடாது. So இந்த நாலு பிரச்சனை இல்லைன்னா you should look at shade house plantation of vanilla. Next point, National Horticultural Board is now giving 50% subsidy for shade house cultivation of any crop. So you get 50% subsidy also. Earlier அது என்ன சொன்னாங்கன்னா, you have to go to a bank, get a loan from the bank and then they will play. Now it's not that. Front end subsidy, straight away you can apply directly and they give you 50% subsidy for cost of for the investment. So that's the points. I hope I answered your question.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much, Doctor. I will touch base with you when I am the COVID la mudinjadukku apra. I will try to meet you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
One more thing, if you were talking about and the local staff, local learner to keep your employees from local. Pollachi madri oorla, it is still possible for them to reach workplace. But Chennai, even though we have all our local employees given under this circumstance, again for them to come back, and I don't see ours is again a skilled labor. I don't see it definitely taking off till almost another 6 months, by which I think each one will find something else to do. I don't know where they will find employment in these conditions. And moreover, yesterday I heard something else, which I'm not sure how true it is, because the next virus to attack us is the satellite virus. So today we're talking about so much of communication and what we think is a plus today. Tomorrow, what if we don't even have this kind of a communication? Because right now you don't know what to expect.
Okay, first question, I agree with you that certain hotspots, especially say like for our state, Chennai is the hottest spot, and those will take longer to recover than say another place like say perhaps Coimbatore district as an example. So definitely the road to recovery is not the same number of days or months for all districts or cities in the country. And Chennai, like Mumbai, is going to take longer. So adanala definitely your business recovery plan has to be longer. Rendavathu, what I'm saying is now in the situation realizing that we have not developed our workforce from the local region, now we are hit. Those who don't have a local workforce are hit bigger than the others. So now that has happened, naturally that is going to take a longer time, where your workforce was not from your local. Today if you say, okay, and from now I'm going to be local, it's going to take several years.
So, what I'm saying is already have local, but it's not like being local in Pollachi.
Definitely. What I'm saying is, but at the same time, let's say on Chennai, and you have a workforce from the whole of Chennai district or Chennai city, at some point we all, whether you're an owner or an employee, you all have to come back to work because you need income. Lockdown was never to be, unfortunately, I don't want to be too political in this, but it's the fact of life. The truth is, or the governments to be, or powers to enforce today, made it look like I'm going to lock down, I'm going to flatten the curve, and then we're going to keep going. That's the wrong impression that they gave. Only to get oneself ready to face the pandemic, be it the society, be it the medical personnel, and be it the employer and employee, to get ready. Today, rather than get ready, that has not been done, unfortunately, and now we are going told, learn to live with it. So that's been a very, very wrong, unfortunate approach. Now it's like, another thing I read and I think I quoted was to say, the storm is the same. The pandemic is the storm. Somebody was saying we're all in the same boat. They said, no, we are not in the same boat. We are all in the same storm. Each boat is different. Some boats have the capability to withstand the storm. Some are getting tossed about much more in this storm. The storm is the same, the boat is different. So I may be in a boat that is better than what you are, or I may be in a boat that is less than somebody. We all have to make sure that our boats individually do not sink. So what do we do? Remedial measures is a tough call depending on where you are and which industry you are. Like if you are in Coimbatore and you happen to be in, let's say, a cinema industry or a theater, being in Coimbatore has no advantage, even whether in Coimbatore or in Chennai. Both are same. So it's the industry that you are in which is going to decide what's the name of your boat. So it's a tough call, I understand, for some of us much more than the others.
About the satellite virus, doctor.
I don't know. See, the various viruses, this is not the last pandemic that we will see. Hopefully, we don't see one for another century, but at least for sure, you don't think that you won't see something else. This pandemic would have given you the strength, or at least the foresight on what you need to do if the next one comes. Many measures have to be preventive. Certain other measures will be reactive if it comes. So I think it has alerted us to the fact to not dismiss it as a science fiction movie, which we all thought it was when we saw various movies in the last 10 years. But at the same time, don't panic.
Thank you.
Let us have one last question from the participant. Karthik, you can go ahead with your question, Karthik.
Hello, Mahindran sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Good evening. I am Karthik.
Yeah, good evening.
Yeah, IT Zonal Secretary for Makkal Neethi Mayam, sir. Karthik.
Yeah, okay.
How are you, sir?
I was trying to start. I didn't see your image, but now when you said IT, I remember. Very good. How are you?
Okay. Fine. Yeah, very fine, sir. I hope you're doing well.
I'm fine, thank you.
So my question is about startup in general, sir. Because of the fact that you have traveled several countries, you might be knowing the difference. Why the big startups are coming only in Western countries like US? Take for example WhatsApp, Facebook, and Instagram. They are coming up and ruling the world. These companies are only from US. If you take in India too, we have some companies like Swiggy, Ola, Flipkart. But again, see, Flipkart has been taken over by some other biggies, and Ola people are eyeing for that. So why is that? Two questions. Why is that some big startups are coming only in US? Why is that India, even if it comes, it doesn't sustain? Is that anything that government's patronage is lacking, or kind of in that angle, or what is the main reason, sir?
Okay, one thing is, I think what we have to give credit to the West. I think when I said do not think they are superior to you, I said in terms of knowledge and if you want to call it genetically, we are no less than anybody, is what I said. But at the same time, what I give credit to the West is their R&D. They're always doing research. So that is why if you see innovation or new product, especially technology, invention, always majority happens in the West. We don't invest in R&D as much as a culture, as a country. So many things we are looking at from the West because they are leading in terms of research and development. So new ideas are coming from there because we are not investing in R&D. And it's not easy for a startup, for an entrepreneur to research in R&D. Right? So that is where they are leading. Second thing I really give them credit for is that what they do research, they do put it out for public consumption in terms of journals or books or whatever. So that is also something I appreciate from them. For us, it's always been
because what is ironical
property. Pardon?
Because what is ironical, sir, you might be knowing, in all those companies, the think tanks are Indians, like mainly South Indians. They are only holding some important positions, but the owners are always US people.
Yeah, that's in line with what I said. We are no less in terms of knowledge or genetic or capability or multitasking. I said we are no less in that. But those key people are investing money in that. So they're employing people from around the globe, majority of which also happen to be from India. So that we are investing, a long-term investment in that particular capability, which is now becoming a part of India too. Now you're having R&D in pharmaceutical companies, you're having R&D in services with companies, you're having R&D in agriculture. That particular culture of investment into research and development is something that I think has come in only for the last 10 years or 15 years in India, whereas it's been around there for 100 years or more. So it's going to take time for us to catch up to that. Next is, of course, definitely in terms of financial support.
So can we include this kind of...
Pardon? Something? Then we include this?
Hello? Sir, one more thing. Can we see in this angle also, sir, in India, there is a lot of red tapeism from the government side, a lot of formalities to be
I said the second point I was about to say, I wanted to come to three things. Second point I said was about financial institution support. Here in India, like for example, if you happen to be an Indian sitting in Dubai or Mauritius or even Singapore, you're able to get financial support for the growth of your business much more than in India. Today we have the government saying we are going to give working capital 10% increase. We are going to allow collateral for capital less. But this is something that is day in, day out for others. For us, it's supposed to be a pandemic soft, right? But for others, it's always. Like, for example, we happen to be dealing with, say, Mauritius. So I had a visit from the State Bank of Mauritius coming all the way to Pollachi to see me, to invite me to become a client of theirs. But I'm not able to get that from the same bank which is in Coimbatore. That's the sort of thing. And then they are giving you working capital. They are offering to give you working capital purely based on your stock and your business plan and your purchase order. Here, they ask you, for example, for every 1:1 collateral, for every 10 crores you want 20. How can you grow at 30% per year if you have to give 30% of asset a collateral every year? You're never going to do. You will come to a roadblock somewhere. So yes, that attitude of financial institutions where they seem to fund the people who borrow in thousands of crores who happen to then run away. And then there is a small startup and things don't get the support unless you get a pandemic. Is a very sad state of affairs, and red tapeism is the third.
True, sir. Fine, sir. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
I just wanted to put this question where most of the participants asked in the chat box. So being a doctor, agriculturist, entrepreneur, politician, how do you manage time? இது எல்லாத்தையும் எப்படி மேனேஜ் பண்றீங்க சிங்கிள் பர்சன்? இட்ஸ் a common question.
அது மேனேஜ் பண்றது ஃபர்ஸ்ட் வந்து நம்ம எதை பண்ணலாம்னு எடுக்கிறோமோ அதுக்கு மேல ஒரு பைத்தியம் இருக்கணும். You must be mad about what you do. Passion is not enough. You have to be a little crazy about that.
Yeah.
So once you find that, then at the end of the day, as anybody, எல்லாத்துக்கும் தெரியும், and as a doctor I can say a little more, you're not going to sleep for more than 6 to 7 or 8 hours. என்ன வேணாலும் 8 மணி நேரத்துக்கு மேல தூங்க முடியாது ஒரு நாளைக்கு. சாப்பிட்றதுக்குன்னு எத்தனை மணி நேரம் ஒதுக்க முடியும்? ஒரு 3 மணி நேரம் ஒதுக்கலாம், all your meals together. So you do have at least minimum 12 hours to work. So if you're crazy about what you want to do, if you're extremely passionate about that, then you have to, it's not so difficult to manage time. And I think personally, so whether it's for setting aside an hour for physical well-being or exercise in the morning, then setting aside X number of hours where I go to my factory, and then of course another hours I still like to practice, because I keep saying that I will continue to play the game till I'm good enough that I'm somebody else. So I continue to give some opinions in medical practice. The 1/3 that I used to see. And then of course giving back to society is what I call politics, not the old type of politics. Here it's about taking home money from that field, but here it's about giving back. It's like CSR and corporate social responsibility. I call it individual social responsibility, where you come to a stage of life where you think you can give back time to making society better. I keep telling everybody can't do that. Or somebody, I think MBA graduate asked me, I said, no. First you concentrate on getting your profession right, learn what you have to, then you come to this. Till then you be an influencer, you be a voter. Don't give up your right to vote. You probably make a call to 10 friends or 100 relatives and tell them to choose the right party, whichever party, but think before you choose. But here when you come in life to a place where you see, yes, I can give back, which I call individual social responsibility or individual political responsibility, then I am able to add that also into the what is the spectrum of things I do. That's all.
Okay, well said. Thank you so much. And in the question only, it is a common question for all the speakers which I have at the end. Enna this remote startup painam, we are planning it for 20 days, 19 days actually. ஒரு நாளைக்கு 4 ஸ்பீக்கர்ன்ற மாதிரி 90 days பிளான் பண்ணியிருக்கோம். 20th day we are inviting Minister for Business MC Sampath invite பண்ணி we are going to discuss with him in what entrepreneurs and startup expect from the government of Tamil Nadu அப்படின்ற மாதிரி. So அதுக்கு வந்து we thought of getting in points from the speakers, participants and the மாதிரி. So what do you think, idla, what is your stand on this?
No, why not? I see that you have to finally engage with your government, whoever it is, good, bad or average. So you must engage. That is what we do in business. That is what you do in politics. You have to keep engaging. And after all, so you must do that. I welcome that idea.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. You've been so supportive. நான் எடுக்கிற ஒரு விஷயத்துக்கும் when I come to you never say no, you say yes. And என் ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் கூட, சென்னையில் இருக்க ஃப்ரெண்ட்ஸ் கூட சொல்லுவாங்க, லைக் உங்கூருக்காரங்கனால நீ சீக்கிரம் ஈஸியா அவரை கன்வின்ஸ் பண்ணிடு அப்படின்னு. அப்படி இல்லை, அது அப்படி இல்லை. இட் த வே வி அப்ரோச் தி பேஷன் ஐ ஃபாலோ அண்ட் ஹி லைக்ஸ் இட், ஸோ தட்ஸ் வை இஸ் சப்போர்ட்டிங் அப்படின்ற மாதிரி சொல்லுவோம். ஸோ தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் யுவர் டைம். ஏன்னா உங்களோட பிஸி ஷெட்யூல்ல தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் கொரோனா. ஏன்னா கோவிட் இல்லைன்னா உங்க ஷெட்யூல்ல 1 மணி நேரம் பிடிச்சிருக்க முடியுமான்னு எனக்கு தெரியல. ஸோ தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் தட் அண்ட் தேங்க்ஸ் ஃபார் யுவர் டைம் அண்ட் 1 hour உங்களோட ஜேர்னியை ஷேர் பண்ணதுக்கு. இட் வாஸ் லைக் ஒரு அகெயின் ஒரு MBA படிச்ச மாதிரி தான் ஒரு ஃபீல் இருந்துச்சு. அத்தனை விஷயம் தெரிஞ்சுக்க முடிஞ்சு. தேங்க்யூ ஸோ மச் டாக்டர். தேங்க்யூ ஸோ மச்.
My pleasure. All the best to every one of you. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.